From the Grow Louisiana Coalition, I'm Jennifer Crockett, and this is Making Energy, a podcast where we discuss the most important issues facing Louisiana's economic engine and working coast. 2023 marks a new stage of the oil and natural gas industry, fueled by unprecedented American investments offshore and on land. It's an energy evolution.
We sort of have the stars aligned in Louisiana for a number of reasons. So one is that we have this huge petrochemical industry in Louisiana that we want to keep here. On top of that, we've got the right geology to do it. And on top of that, we've got the know-how and the workforce.
The promise? American-made, reliable, clean, and affordable energy built on a mix of existing and emerging technologies. Louisiana is the key. By the end of this episode of Making Energy, you'll finally be able to chime in on conversations about low-carbon energy solutions. We are digging into carbon capture and storage, green and blue hydrogen, and the tens of billions of dollars being invested to produce American-made energy and fuels with lower emissions in Louisiana. Here to explain it all is Dr. Karsten Thompson. He has chaired the LSU Department of Petroleum Engineering and is now the interim dean of LSU's College of Engineering and a professor. Thompson received his bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Colorado and his PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Michigan. Just recently, Thompson led LSU into uncharted territory as the very first college in America to offer a formal concentration in carbon capture, utilization, and storage. The first students from that program just graduated this spring. Dr. Thompson, welcome to Making Energy.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Could you give us a basic explanation of green and blue hydrogen as well as carbon capture and storage? How do they work, and what are the benefits or products that we can expect out of these new energy innovations?
Think back to maybe a high school physics class. We learned that there's all kinds of different forms of energy, potential energy and kinetic energy.
So how do we get hydrogen to use as a fuel source?
We can't mine hydrogen. It's not out there. We need to create hydrogen from something else. So we need to have the energy, and then we create the hydrogen. One of the examples of where you can create hydrogen is from water, because water is H2O, right? So that means two hydrogen atoms hooked to one oxygen atom. If we pass electricity through water in the right way, it'll break the water apart into hydrogen and oxygen. That's one of the industrial ways we'd create hydrogen. So an example would be, you could imagine having a solar cell, you could have a wind farm. That's going to create electricity, pass that through the water and what we call an electrolyzer, and we can produce hydrogen. And that's what we would call green hydrogen. So the green is tied to the idea of environmentally friendly. So we're using a renewable energy like solar, like wind to create the electricity. That creates the hydrogen, and we've got green hydrogen.
We also hear about blue hydrogen. What is that?
Blue hydrogen is the exact same hydrogen. There's no difference in that. It's just a kind of a moniker to think about where did that come from. So another way we could produce hydrogen is we could get that electricity from burning a fossil fuel and then create the electricity. We could actually create that hydrogen from stripping it off natural gas also, because natural gas is mostly methane, which is a carbon atom, and four hydrogens, so we could take it directly off there. But both of those involve creating CO2 somehow, so we're not addressing that problem. If we create the CO2, and then we pump the CO2 underground and store it there, ideally forever, that's what we call blue hydrogen. Because it's not truly renewable energy creating that hydrogen, but if we sequestered the CO2 instead of emitting into the atmosphere, then it's a lot better than what we're doing right now.
And then that takes us to carbon capture and storage. What's a quick explanation of that process?
It's a matter of capturing the CO2 somewhere, and there's CO2 emissions all around us. The most efficient ways of capturing CO2 is you get it at the big emitters, and that would be, for instance, power plants or chemical manufacturing. And so those would be the first targets for the most effective CO2 capture. And if we can capture those streams of CO2, instead of releasing them into the atmosphere, we can pump them into geologic storage or sequestration. And it's just a matter of taking the CO2, pumping it thousands of feet under the ground into these porous rock formations. And if it's designed right, then it's going to stay there for millennia. And we've sequestered that CO2 geologically instead of having it emitted into the atmosphere.
So instead of coming out of a smokestack, that CO2 goes underground and stays there.
Exactly.
The U.S. Department of Energy says it will award more than $24 billion from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for CO2 transportation and storage infrastructure projects right here in Louisiana. Why do you think carbon capture is a safe, smart alternative to add to Louisiana's energy profile on such a grand scale?
And that means we globally, we have to do this because the emissions problem is the urgent thing that we need to focus on right now. And so in one sense, it's all of our responsibility to do that. We have a unique opportunity in Louisiana, I think, because we sort of have the stars aligned in Louisiana for a number of reasons. So one is that we have this huge petrochemical industry in Louisiana that we want to keep here. I mean, that's a lot of jobs, a lot of economic growth and manufacturing for us. And that petrochemical industry is one of the sources for the concentrated CO2 that will be sequestered. So you want that source to be near the site where you're going to do the sequestration. That gives Louisiana an advantage. On top of that, we've got the right geology to do it. And on top of that, we've got the know-how and the workforce, because our workforce has grown up around the oil and gas industry. So it really is an opportunity for Louisiana to be a true global leader in CCS. I think the misunderstanding that I've seen maybe from some of the commentary that's been in the general public is that this is a new technology, and that's not really the case. We've been injecting CO2 for a number of decades now. A couple of those projects have been sequestration or storage, and then a lot of them are for improved oil recovery. But either way, there's a lot of experience injecting the CO2 into the ground. That part's not new, and it aligns really well with the expertise that geologists and geophysicists and petroleum engineers have, understanding how to design that and make it relatively safe. So none of these major engineering projects come without any risk, but I do believe it's a very manageable risk, just like all the other major engineering products we undertake. And the opportunity is so great in Louisiana that I just don't think we can afford to pass it up. If you look at the money that's coming in from the federal government and the industry that's investing in that, it's at the forefront of their minds that this is something that is a positive impact to everybody.
As I mentioned in the intro, LSU is the first college to provide students with a carbon capture concentration. So it's been written that two things led to this. First, Louisiana's resource landscape, and second, the energy industry here, including companies like ExxonMobil, Shell, and Chevron, coming to LSU and saying, where are your graduates with this CCS expertise? We want to hire them. Tell us about this marriage of geology and jobs and LSU's collaboration with industry partners to prepare the next generation of the industrial workforce.
We had a number of conversations with our partners, and I think what surprised me the most was that when we were having those conversations, we're graduating bachelor's degrees in petroleum engineering is kind of the main product that's coming out of our department. And those are inexperienced engineers. They need 2-3 years on the ground to really understand how that knowledge is applied. So when I talked to the companies, I wouldn't have been surprised if they would have said, this is really important to us, but we're mostly transferring our experienced engineers into these units. And that really wasn't the case. Every single company I talked to said, you're thinking about doing this? Absolutely, we cannot wait. When are you going to, your first graduate's going to be coming out? And it's really come to pass, because I talked to some of our most recent graduates that have just been out a couple of years, and a number of them are telling me they're in a CCS unit or a low carbon unit or whatever their company is doing. So it's clearly the young engineers are making an impact already in this new industry. It's going to be many years, decades, that we're still going to need to produce petroleum products because we use it for so many other things. So as those graduates come out, they may be working in CCS units now, but that you could easily envision them transferring to other aspects of oil and gas production during their career, and then possibly transferring back even into disciplines that don't know exactly what it's going to look like now.
So you're talking about aspects outside of energy. So can you give me some examples of that?
When we produce oil, for example, then a lot of that is turned into fuel, like gasoline at this time. But a big portion of that barrel of crude oil that comes out of the ground also makes products that are all around us. And that's everything from everyday plastics, like there's a water bottle sitting in front of me right now, to a lot more high-tech things. So if you were sitting in your living room right now and you looked around, you could find the result of petroleum products and everything from the cushions of your couch to a lot of the clothes you wear to the carpet. If you walk through a hospital, it would be the same type of things, everything from low-tech to high-tech. So we're not going to want to live in a world where we don't have the products that come from petroleum around us because they're so useful, cost-effective, and safe.
Coming up in episode 5 of this podcast, we will also be talking to STEM NOLA about the value of exposing young children to STEM and STEM careers. Dr. Thompson, talk about the opportunities available to your students now that didn't exist even just a few years ago.
Rewind 5-10 years ago, then almost every single one of our graduates would have been involved in oil and gas production. And now we've got the same graduates, the same basic expertise going in, and a lot of them working on CCS. But it doesn't stop there. If you think about what that expertise is, which is drilling into the ground, injecting and producing fluids, it could also be applied to something like geothermal energy. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for students that enjoy the kind of earth sciences and combine that with engineering, and that would be from our discipline. So you can imagine a student going into, say, construction management, construction engineering, and you can envision a smart home of the future that's much more energy efficient, so they've got to learn a new technology associated with that. You could have a student in electrical engineering, and we're going to need a power grid that can be much more reliable, have defenses against cybersecurity and cyber attacks, and we'll need new graduates to understand how to do that. And then mechanical and chemical engineering are just at the heart of, say, the chemical manufacturing and the energy industry in South Louisiana.
So lots of cartwheels being had in the halls of LSU's College of Engineering.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for being our guest today on Making Energy.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Next time on Making Energy, how to build a high-paying career for free with local workforce training in energy.
Basically, between now and 2030, there is a need of 1 million energy workers in the sector.
I talked to Dr. Gerard Malassaw, an entrepreneur and teacher, on how to get started and the unexpected places energy opportunities take off.
It wasn't like we did an analysis of what a barber does every day and what a welder does. We were going there to recruit, and then the barber would say, hey, I can make that much money?
That's on the next Making Energy.